Okay, so before getting into this too far, little background about me. Let me put it this way. My wife used to say to me, I'm so sick of your anti American attitude. And I would say, I'm not anti American. I'm just anti pretty much everything the United States has done in Latin America, like South and Central America, and in Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos, and whatever. Like when you become an empire, there are going to be people that get fed up with all the crap that you do. You know, um, and in my life, as a Canadian, this is generally what happens, especially if you work in new technologies. You try to start companies here in Canada, and there's not a lot of investment here. It's really, I wish Canadians understood, because I see people buying multi-million dollar houses as if there's wealth in Canada. There is not. It is so difficult to get investment in Canada for high tech that two of the companies that I worked for were both sold off to the Americans for chump change. Okay, so this is kind of my background. So I worked most of my life for American companies, as a matter of fact, even though the companies were started here, okay, by people that I know. Um, Generally, for quite some time, I would have to say that my tune had changed about America as a result of that, because I worked with so many Americans and they were all very, very decent people. Very different cultures. I worked with people from New York, a completely different culture from here. The people working in California, I would say, is a much closer culture to here. And the guys in New York would say that to me. They'd say, you Canadians don't work nearly as fast as we do in New York, which is like this, but you're not as slow as the guys in California, Or maybe they said, we're even slower than the guys in California. I don't remember. But there's a culture difference. And working fast doesn't necessarily get you the best results. Look at the GDP of California. So anyway, that's a very, very long introduction into this. And I have very many American friends who are great people. But the theme of this is still, why does America have to ruin everything? And boy, oh boy, it is incredible what is going on in the world today and how people are suffering because of American foreign policy and American major corporations. So let's tackle these things. We all know about the war in Iran and about the Strait. But the thing that fascinates me, being a Canadian, and I watch a lot of American news, and a lot of business news from the United States and Asia and London, is that the American news does talk about, prices are going up in the United States, and the price at the pump is going up and all this other stuff. But they don't really talk about the absolute chaos that this has unleashed throughout major parts of Asia and even through the UK and Ireland, and it's going on in Europe, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And to see people on the news in the United States saying, well, we're not going to run out of oil. We're in the United States. We're a major oil producer as well as consumer. It's just going to get more expensive, and that's true. And people are going to get pissed off because of that. And if it gets really, really bad as far as expenses go, because we know the United States has a K-shaped economy right now, which means that only the upper echelon of society is keeping the entire economy on track right now. Everyone else is living paycheck to paycheck. And if things get bad enough with the expenses that are going to come from the increase in diesel in particular, but also a lot of people have to drive to work in the United States and drive for work in the United States. if all of that gets bad enough, there certainly will be social unrest. But we know, and Trump and Hegseth have already pointed out, that they are willing to use the military against American citizens if it ever comes to that. But the rest of the world is already in much, much worse shape, and a lot of the poorest people in the world are suffering the most right now and are having to ration all types of energy that they need in their lives. So this is a major pain in the ass to everyone around the world. Don't even start to talk about nuclear weapons and they're doing this and they're doing that. They went in there. It was a stupid idea. They've already lost the war, and now they're trying to get out and save face at the same time. And they are screwing up the entire world economy because of this. Okay? But that's foreign policy. American foreign policy has been all over the place for so long. There are so many history books written about major mistakes in foreign policy and the problems it causes the entire world. I mean, the entire problem with Iran, as far as the Western world goes back to British and American involvement in Iran, right? So anyway, there's that. But there's this other thing that really, really, really is starting to piss me off. And it is AI, obviously. I've talked about this so many times. The amount of investment in AI, the amount of resources required for AI, the absolute greed of these companies that they must be number one in AI, no matter what the cost. They are getting rid of employees. They are taking on debt. They are taking what money they do have and investing hundreds of billions of dollars into this AI. And of course, there's so much greed involved, but greed always comes from fear. They have this fear that they may not be the ones controlling AI, and for them, that's going to be a catastrophe. I don't know how correct they are in thinking that they should be blowing the amount of cash on AI that they are. My belief is that AI will become a commodity at some point in time. It already is somewhat of a commodity. It's a very expensive commodity, but there are dozens and dozens and dozens of companies that you can go to for AI, right? And I don't see that changing. Some companies will get a one-up, on the other companies, and then someone else will come along with another idea and whatever. But the amount of resources, a lot of people might say, well, it's their money and they're spending the money. No. The amount of resources that they're taking from the entire world to do this is ridiculous. And this is the reason, this will give you a little hint as to why I am pissed off with them. Of course, that's Mario in his little bee outfit. I guess that's from Super Mario Galaxy. Sony having to raise the price of their consoles. Nintendo having to raise the price of their consoles. Why? Because all the RAM is being eaten up by AI data centers. So listen, as a consumer, I can consume AI, that's fine. But let me tell you, if I have a choice between Nintendo and Grok, I'm choosing Nintendo every fucking time. And you assholes are out there buying every single piece of fucking RAM so that now that someone that actually wants to enjoy their life has to pay more. And let me set the record straight. It's the fucking American companies, mostly with the shittiest asshole CEOs, that are doing this. Amazon, Meta, Google, who I used to respect, Oracle, all shitty CEOs, right? Actually, I don't know if Sergey Brin is a CEO, but I saw a quote, and I'll have to look it up and apologize if I'm wrong, but I think it was only a few years ago that he was saying that people have to work 70 hours a week if they want to be considered a good employee. Fuck you. You're not running a startup at Google, you piece of shit. Jesus Christ. I worked in startups forever and I put in all the extra hours and I never got paid any overtime because it was a startup. Google is a mature company, one of the wealthiest companies on the face of the planet. I am shocked if employees don't turn to him and say, "Shut your fucking mouth, you fucking asshole." And I'm sure people are now, but they're laying off so many people. Talking about greed. These companies always want more market share, more products that they're selling. But at one time, they wanted more employees so that they could say, we're obviously the best because we have 50,000 engineers or whatever. And they fucked up the entire world equilibrium for engineering, software engineering, by showing a fake amount of demand for these employees. Then, once the market is saturated, they feel safe laying them off because they don't care if they go to the competition. So that's another form of greed. They fucked over so many lives for their greed. Now, I was listening to a person who said, and I don't know how true this is, that there were people that were working for Oracle that just recently got laid off that may have lost somewhere near $1 million worth of non-vested shares. Oh, boy. But I've always known, like if anyone ever called me and say, are you interested in working at Oracle, I'd tell them to fuck off. Because being someone who was a potential customer of Oracle, I knew these guys are not in any way above board. There are certain companies I wouldn't work for. VMware, recently Cisco, Oracle, whatever. But anyway, the absolute greed of these companies, this is the kind of consequences you get. You get people that are drawn through the college system because they are told there's an infinite amount of jobs when there are not, only to have their lives destroyed, right? They have to invest so much in AI because they're greedy for that they have to lay off employees, right? They have to take on debt because they can't be behind. Now, American companies, here's the thing. You can also say, well, that's just fine. Well, what if it doesn't work out? Are we going to bail out these companies and all of the debt that they have through all of this, right? Have you seen all the bailouts in the United States on failure that really sits at the hands of the CEOs, right? Fannie Mae, the car companies, savings and loans, just goes on and on. And with the car companies, here's one that really pisses me off because the American government wants to screw over Canada as far as car manufacturing. We also bailed out your car companies up here, you assholes, right? Now, another thing that I've been reading, I've seen this in a lot because I look at the job postings and stuff like that, and then I see what people are saying, is that they're being forced to use AI at work. So this is one of the many thefts that are going on with corporations in the United States right now. So I've already talked about the one, which is you will get these perhaps vested shares. A lot of you are never going to see them. It's not like the old days, right? But the other thing is, I want to talk about how people learn. A large part of learning has to do with very basic human, I don't know what you call it, chemistry. I'm talking about things like adrenaline, serotonin, stuff like that, right? I'll give you an example. On day number 2, so I installed Linux after having a computer for 6 months in 94, right? On day 2, I locked myself out of my own directory because I'm just going through all the different commands. And I had done a chmod that locked me out of my home directory. And I panicked. And the adrenaline came through. And I'm like, oh, am I going to have to install the whole OS again? Because I've only had a few hours of experience here. But then I remembered something I had read, which was Chown as well. And it's about ownership. And I realized, no, I have ownership of that directory. I can still change it so that I have access to it. And that's very basic. But the point is this. the mistake and then the adrenaline coming after teaches me something. I'm not copying and pasting out of AI to get things done, which you're never going to learn from. You're never going to grow. And it's the same thing. I would say this about music. There's a lot of things that can help you to make music, and people feel very accomplished that they've written some music, apparently. But the reality is, you get a huge boost if you're, for example, writing a song. When you come up with that chord, let's say you have two chords and you need to get from one to the next, and you don't know how you're going to get there that makes sense for the song you're writing, and then you find it, right? Maybe it's a secondary dominant or something like that, right? And it fills you with an emotion. That also reinforces your learning. So if you're being told at work where you are expecting to grow as a person, as well as get your job done, that you must use AI, they are stealing that from you. And why are they stealing it? Because they do not believe that that matters. Not for you, anyway. Maybe for someone else that they have in higher esteem. But for you, you're never going anywhere anyway. You're not really worth anything as a human being, and your development does not matter. That's what they're saying to you. You know, and it's just another form of theft. But all large corporations look back to Taylorism, which you can look up. And that's what they want. They want the human robot showing up. So we had a good run in high tech for a while. I'd say it's mostly dead, and it's mostly due to greedy CEOs and the rest of the C-suite, you know? And I don't know if there's much more than I can, well, there's always more than I can add to it, but if I can't find it quickly enough, there's no point in going on. But the point is this, from cooking oil all the way up to being able to afford a Nintendo Switch 2, and, you know, for Nintendo to survive, because this is killing them right now, you know, all of this crap comes back to these American companies that don't give a shit about people, as they have been showing over the last few years. They also don't even give a shit about the American economy, right? They care about, well, satisfying their own greed. Who knows if anyone will be there to bail them out? I certainly hope not. And I think it's not just foreigners that are thinking this about these companies. I think a lot of Americans would laugh if anything bad happened to these companies financially, because I think we're all sick of them. They think so highly of themselves when really it was their employees who got them where they are, and now they're treating them like shit and acting like kings at the same time. Fuck you. I hope it goes south. Thanks for watching. And I just want to say, you know, a company like Nintendo is a company that focuses on making games and bringing enjoyment into people's lives. They might try to rip people off, and I hear all this crap all the time on the PlayStation, like fans and Microsoft fans. The fact is this, Nintendo is a game company. I got really sick of the people at IGN that used to run the Nintendo portion of IGN saying they should be more like Xbox. Why? Look at Xbox now. It's a joke, right? They're Nintendo. They're a game company. And the other thing people used to go on about is like, we want mature content. And by mature content, they mean naked people, fucking, and blood. How important is that really to you in a game? You know, I can understand scary stuff. You know, maybe Resident Evil is too scary for young kids. That I get, but that's not typically what people were talking about. So there's a lot of stupidity around all of that. The point is, we need to protect companies like Nintendo. I don't think we need to protect Amazon. I don't think we need to protect a shithole like Facebook, where I go on there and it's mega garbage 24/7. It's for brain dead idiots. That's why I'm on there, right? Or Oracle, or X. I don't give a shit about them. That's just my personal opinion. Leave your thoughts in the in the comments. Have a good day.